Oh, it's official. Greetings and salutations. I'm an alcoholic. My name is Bill. I'd like to welcome everyone to another chapter of Design for Living, a subcharter of the Big Book Compendium. We are in chapter 7, working with others. Today we have a special treat. Believe it or not, I have become uncomfortable with the sound of my own voice over the last year. So I have two very special friends that are going to share their experience, strength, and hope. I'm going to read a paragraph at a time. They are going to comment on those, and we are going to get through this portion of working with others. We are on page 96, second full paragraph. Suppose now you are making your second visit to the man. He has read this volume and says he is prepared to go through with the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know you are available if he wishes to make a decision and tell his story, but do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else. Who would like to go first? Gigi, you can go first this paragraph.
Okay, hi everybody. I am an alcoholic. My name is Gigi, and I'm very happy to be here today. Okay, um, we're going to get our precise instructions in here. Um, and again, I don't know, I'm coming in the middle of a chapter, so what this chapter is really designed more for 12-step calls, not as much for sponsorship as it is for 12-step calls. So that definitely, because some of these things don't align with because it's if you're making your first visit, if you're making your second business visit, a lot of them don't align with the sponsorship that we know of today. Back then, it was more like when this was written, it was a 12-step calls, what they were doing. They started doing 12-step calls when they were sober. I mean, Dr. Bob was sober. I think it was a total of 12 or 14 days by the time they made their 12-step call to Bill Dotson. So if you really want the precise instructions for sponsorship, to employers is going to give you the best instructions there are for sponsorship. Okay, so but they're talking about the 12 steps of the program to go through with all 12 steps, right? Or as they called them in the very beginning, the 5 propositions. And let him know you're available if he wishes to make a decision, right? And that decision actually begins in step 2, not in step 3. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we had what is our choice to be? God is everything or he is nothing. And tell his story, tell you his entire life story. And do not insist upon it if he wishes to consult somebody else. Anybody else, including non-members of the program, because we know that in the beginning, this was not the only way that people got sober. So, and it's not the only way that people get sober. Maybe they want to go a different way. My attitude is that if they want to go a different way, then allow them to go a different way, because John Barleycorn will bring them back again if they are not convinced. So that's what I've got on that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, alcoholic. Bill, did you read the "Do not be discouraged"? Is that what I'm sorry, I thought you were going to read the paragraph, but I didn't hear anyone read it. You're muted.
We actually read that last week, and I suppose I should have brought
Okay.
people up to speed. What happened is in the beginning, this book was being mailed out, obviously, at the beginning, because they were very small and there was a whole bunch of copies of them. And people got their hands on the book, began to recover as a result of following it, then went out and looked for prospects, future members
No,
of
I'm
alcohol.
sorry. I thought you were going to read the paragraph before we commented on it, and I didn't hear the paragraph that was read. I apologize. I'm new to this.
Okay, I read the middle paragraph.
Oh,
Suppose
okay.
you're making the second approach. So we saw him the first time. We lent him our copy of the book because we're too
Okay.
cheap to buy him one. He's read it. Now we're going on our second approach.
Okay. Sorry, you guys. I just want to say that I love this part. You know, I get so excited. I mean, how many people actually come back? You know, we say, I meet with people. The first question I ask them is, can you stay sober alone? Can you stay sober without help? And then I tell them what it means to be an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous and what we do here to stay sober and what I've done to stay sober. And I talk about how the steps are tools. So if I'm now on my second visit and they say, yes, I've read it and I'm prepared to go through the 12 steps, and then I can help them, you know, and I talk to them about what it means to apply them to my life. It's not enough to just, you know, leave them in the book. And I tell them, I will help you learn how to apply them to your life. I love the part earlier in the chapter when it says, get to know all you can about him. The reason why I do that is so I can make examples and I can say, hey, that problem you're having with your coworker, let's talk about how to apply the steps to that. And if I don't know anything about their life, because I'm, you know, just talking about myself instead of learning about them, then I don't know how to help them get connected to what's in the book. Because that's what worked for me. My sponsor helped me get connected with this, not just have this wall of information hitting me, you know, and I don't know what to do with it in my actual life because I'm going to work and there's a coworker that's trying to get my job, you know, and I need to know how to use the steps there so I don't go home and drink over it. So I absolutely love being able to tell people, you know, I just talked to a woman today, you know, she's trying to get her kids back and they're real young and they're not aware of her yet, of her drinking. And I got to tell her, you don't ever have to drink again. I didn't. I was just willing to do what was suggested. And I kept being willing. And you know, I haven't done it perfectly, but I did enough to still be here and to have children that have never had to see me drink, you know, and that gives them hope, right? And I tell them I'm available. You know, you call me anytime. I tell people you can share my number anytime. I do not have any problem. You share my number as much as you want with anyone who needs it. You know, I let them know that I'm here. Let's see. Do not assist at a parent if you're first call. Yeah, if they want somebody else, you know, I realized there was a woman, I had the inspiration that she might do better with somebody in her local area because maybe she needs community in a face-to-face meeting. And I have nothing against online meetings. That's mainly what I do today. But it was something that I had that little nudge and I encouraged her. And then really, I just went and looked at the area code. I was like, do I know anybody in Colorado Springs? And I found somebody and I hooked her up and it's been amazing. The inspiration was correct. She's been able to stay sober and now she has a community of people that are supporting her. And it's amazing. So that's it for me. Thanks. Let's move on to the next one, I guess. Or yeah.
Absolutely. And one thing I stand corrected on, it wasn't just mailing out the books. Gigi brought up a good point. They were visiting them in detoxes in hospitals, and that's going to tie into our next proposition. He may be broke and homeless. If he is, you might try to help him about getting a job or giving him a little financial assistance. But you should not deprive your family or creditors of money they should have. Perhaps you will want to take the man into your home for a few days, but be sure you use discretion. Be certain he will be welcomed by your family and that he's not trying to impose upon you for money, connections, or shelter. Permit that, and you only harm him. You may be making it possible for him to be insincere. You may be aiding in his destruction rather than his recovery. All right, Elizabeth?
Yeah, this is good. You know, it's an interesting thing to find out, like how much do we help the person? And I love what Gigi said about 2 employers, because it says if they make any effort, if they show any effort, right? If we're carrying them and chasing them, no, that's not going to help, right? You're just wasting your own time. But if they show effort, then we do everything we can for them. And I heard a speaker recently say it's good for us to know people in other programs in case they need that help. You know, we can send them to people and say, hey, you know, AA isn't exactly right for what you're dealing with, but I know somebody that you can call. You know, and how beautiful that we have a network all over the world today. And I just wanted to point out something that I've had recent experience in. I know other alcoholics, right? When they say, like in our group, to qualify whether someone's been drinking today, we say, have you taken a drink today? We don't say, have you been drinking? Because I know the alcoholic mind might go, well, I haven't drank in the last hour. I'm not drinking right this very minute. You know, we'll figure out a way to answer that question the way we want to answer it, right? I know that one, but I recently dealt with somebody who told me they were tapering off benzos. And I don't know if they're telling me the truth or not about why they can't get into the steps because they have brain fog, because I don't have any experience with benzos. I don't have any experience with addiction to that. So I actually told that person I didn't know if I could help her after a little while, and seeing, like, I don't know if she's telling me the truth or not about what she's going through and why she can't do the work, because I don't have any experience. And that became clear. That inspiration kept coming. Like, I just don't know if I'm the right person here. And I just encouraged her. I said, I'll be here for you to help you find somebody, but I just don't know. Because honestly, I don't know if she's telling me the truth or not. Because I don't know what's going on over there with that situation, you know, because I don't know people who do those drugs and what they're doing and how they look when they're on them or off them, or, you know, whatever's going on. I just don't have the experience. So I'm not going to be helpful there. But I do know a drunk, you know. Over to you, Gigi.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Alcoholic Gigi. And it's so nice to be able to do this with you. I thought I was doing it with Bill and I got somebody much prettier. Okay, so before we spend our time with somebody, right? Like Elizabeth said, time that we can be used to help another. Make sure that the person is willing. Make sure that you understand. Listen, the minimum requirements for a sponsor on page, I believe it's page 18, if I'm not mistaken. So, and I could be wrong about that. Make sure, you know, it's telling us, the page of this whole paragraph is telling us that how we figure it out and how best to proceed after that, right? We need to know how to figure this out first. There's a lot of fish in this pond. And as we're experiencing in the days of the modern technology and in this platform that we are on right now, right? That the virtual platform, there's so many fish in this pond, and there's a lot of them that are desperate, right? You know, because we're fish, we are fish, right? And we're looking for water. We don't realize that it's surrounding us at the moment, right? We need somebody to help guide us through so we can kind of figure that out, right? Because what we don't realize is that this power that we seek has been with us all along. We just have to actively seek the power, and we have to clear the channels, right? So if the person that you're willing with is not willing, go out and find somebody else, because they're going to want what you have. But do not chase anybody that is not interested. My personal experience with this, and I love how, again, we've got that thing that Bill does, right? Because Bill knew the language and he knew it well, right? And he knew that when you put a but at the beginning of a sentence, it kind of negates the sentence that went before it, right? So it's telling, you know, if you have to help somebody out, if he's really that desperate and you really think he's serious and you have to help him out, then maybe you should. But it tells us earlier in the book that a more accurate demonstration of us practicing these principles in all our affairs is in our home, jobs, and affairs. So we do not deprive our families and our creditors of money. We don't give it to an alcoholic before we give it to our family or our creditors. You know, before I got sober, I used to play this game with my paycheck, right? It would be whatever I wanted first, and then whatever's left over, maybe you can have, until I realized that my money is just a pass through. That's all it is, right? It's a pass through from my job to who I owe the money to the cable company, to the electric company, to the car insurance company, right? So I'm not going to deprive in order to satisfy my need to be a savior, right? Use discretion, right? And I had to do this one time and it was fine. It was okay with my family. My mom was away at my house. I had an empty apartment in my house and somebody desperately needed help. She was kicked out of her house with nothing but a to-go bag. And she stayed for a couple of weeks until she was able to get on her feet. And it says, do not try to impose on you for money, connections, or shelter. Connections. Very, very important. And again, it goes right back to that on page 18, where we're not supposed to sponsor people for connections either. Okay. Permit that and you will only harm him. insincere. And believe me, I've had this experience, like Elizabeth pointed out. I was so new. I mean, I was about a year sober, I think. And somebody came up to me and said, "You're going to sponsor this girl." And guess what? That girl was not an alcoholic, and she almost died in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. At least we got 2 admitted murderers here today. Let's get on with the program of living. Never avoid these responsibilities, but be sure you are doing the right thing if you assume them. Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. You have to act the Good Samaritan, capital G, capital S, every day if need be. It may mean the loss of many nights' sleep, great interference with your pleasures, interruptions to your business. It may mean sharing your money, your house, counseling frantic wives and relatives, innumerable trips to police, courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails, and asylums. Your telephone may jangle at any time of the day or night. Your wife or spouse may sometimes say they are neglected. A drunk may smash the furniture in your home or burn a mattress. You may have to fight with them if they are violent. Sometimes you will have to call a doctor and administer sedatives under his direction. Another time you may have to send for the police or an ambulance. Occasionally you will have to meet such conditions.
Go first, Gigi.
Okay. Hi, guys. Again, Alcoholic Gigi. So, we started on page 96 with how to avoid enabling a newcomer. And this page is going to continue with that. And I love this because I got so confused at first, right? Because when I first took the steps, when I first came into the program, when I tried to read the book without a guide, which we all know is a disaster, I was told that step 1 was the foundation. Upon this foundation of complete willingness, right? And I was confused until I realized that the foundation and the foundation stone are 2 totally different things. The foundation is we lay the foundation for that arch that we're building to freedom, to being a free man. But the foundation stone, working with others, that's the foundation stone of our recovery, right? And we're going to hit 2 main obstacles here. People that are deluded, still deluded, that they think that their alcoholic life is the only normal one, like it says in the doctor's opinion, and thinking that we are different. And it tells us that, we have to be prepared to come out of the comfort zone, right? How hard is it going to be for us to come out of our comfort zone, right? Interference with night's sleep, interruptions with your pleasures, and your home. Your telephone may jangle, may buzz. Mine plays the whistle for the Long Island Railroad. My younger daughter thought that would be a cute thing. You know what it's like when you hear that whistle go off 20 times a day? And there are days when I'm going to be honest with you, I just want to take my phone, I want to throw it. Okay. When I say, don't call me between 5 and 6, that's dinner time. And I have to stick to that because I have to have a boundary. But you know that anytime after 6 p.m., I am returning phone calls, right? I am not sitting in front of Netflix all day long. This is what we have to do. I love when I hear people say, well, I have to practice self-care. Well, if helping another alcoholic is not self-care, what the hell is my question. So that's all I have. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Alcoholic, I love what you said, that this goes back to step 1, right? Because we can lose our humility, and now, by the way, self-care, look at the top of page 20 if you think this is a self-help program, go look at it right now. When I came into AA, self-help was all the rage, and it can make you more selfish with better language, it definitely has its benefits, but the reason why a lot of things don't work with alcoholics, and Dr. Harry Tiebout talks about this. He has an article about this, about why therapy isn't enough. Now, I'm not saying it's not useful. It definitely is. I don't think I would be here without the work that I did there, but it doesn't have what he calls the remedial aspect, which is that we go out and we get into action. You know, we go into action by helping other alcoholics. We go and give to them and get out of self. I don't need to get more into self. I need to get out of self. So I just wanted to point that out for sure. And it's important that I remember that. And hopefully I've had that spiritual awakening and that psychic change that, you know, I mean, I love it when people call me. Let me get back to this sentence. You know, I tell people all the time, if you're miserable and you're trying to work the steps, I will be with you all day. I will be on that phone with you. I will do whatever it takes. If you're miserable and you're not trying to work the steps, you need to call someone else. Because this really is a way of life. And I really keep emphasizing that to people, especially because in my early sobriety, it was not emphasized to me. You know, it was the 1 hour at the meeting and you talk about your problems, you dump them, get advice, and then, you know, go be intolerable to everyone else in your life for the rest of the day. That's pretty much how it was. Make it all look really good. But, you know, I really like this. I tell people, you know, I'm lucky to be in an international home group, so I do turn my phone off at night. But I tell them, you can see when I'm active on WhatsApp at all times. You know, I have that little thing that shows if I'm awake and I'm around, you will see me on there. And and then I make sure that they know how to get support at any time of day. And we have our group has a fellowship chat where people are in all kinds of time zones. And you'll see people will say, is there anybody available to talk right now? So we make sure that people know how to get that help. So if I'm not available, they know what to do. And I love this. You know, I'm married to another person in AA, and you know, we both are committed to this program and what it means. You know, I do love hearing the stories about what, you know, Bill and Lois, or no, it was Dr. Bob that had people staying in his house. You know, I think they probably did have to burn a mattress, or somebody burned a mattress. Something happened. They had a lot of stuff going on in that house. It sounds like when you really get into learning about it. But yeah, just again, the emphasis that for me to work this program myself and for me to stay humble and teachable and realize what I'm here for and know that I'm not immune to this disease, that I could die from this disease, you know, and if any of you have heard my story, you know, I did get close to drinking at 34 years sober because of really painful things happening in my life. And I was shocked at how close that drink was. I have sponsees that have lost their freedom. They've lost their mobility. They've lost their children. You know, I haven't had to suffer some of those consequences, but I know that I could. You know, I take this very seriously. I do what it takes to be active and in the middle because it did save my life. And if that means that I put myself out there for someone, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to do it. I want to be helpful. You know, I don't say no to stuff. I know that the people in service at this meeting don't say no because I see them everywhere in service, you know, and that's why, you know, I have time for this now. I didn't all the time. It was hard to fit AA into my life, but today I do have the time. So I am willing, and I let people know that, you know, and make sure they know. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah. Would one of you ladies like to elaborate on the Good Samaritan? You know that
Oh.
story, right?
So, go ahead. Did you want to do it, Elizabeth?
I don't know that story, but I did like how you pointed out the capital G, capital S. So you know, I do love that helping others is the service side of the triangle, which I also understand to be the spirit side. So if you do mind, body, spirit, recovery is treat our mind with the steps, unity as we take our body to a meeting, which can also help our brain chemistry just to be around other alcoholics, you know, all that stuff's what helps us. And then the service side, helping others is the spirit side. So that was kind of cool when you pointed it out, but I don't know more about the story, so I'll yield over to Gigi. Go ahead.
It's a biblical parable, right? About you know, I went to Catholic school, so you know, we've heard it so many times. You know, the Samaritans were, you know, not, you know, good people. They were not supposed to be good people. They were supposed to be, and you know, the gentleman gets, you know, is in bad shape. And people keep passing him by, and the Good Samaritan comes along and, puts him on his horse and takes him and gets him, the medical attention and everything that he needs. And I love this, and I'm glad that you pointed that out, Bill, because first of all, the Samaritans were outcasts, just like we were supposed to be, just like we're outcasts, right? And the other thing is, it tells us that we have to act the good Samaritan every day. It doesn't say we have to bring as many alcoholics to detox as we can possibly do, but it says we have to act the good Samaritan every day. And that also means, it means even no matter what's going on in here, it shouldn't transfer to here, right? So even as it says we have to act, right? We have to behave as the good Samaritan, and that's what I tell people when we come in here with step 2. Even if you don't fully believe yet, act like someone who does, and you can't go wrong. So thank you.
Well, plus he promised the innkeeper that if he owed him anything on the return trip, he'd pay that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Good story. We seldom allow an alcoholic to live in our homes for a long period of time. It is not good for him, and it sometimes creates serious complications in a family. Though an alcoholic does not respond, there is no reason why you should neglect his family. You should continue to be friendly to them. The family should be offered your way of life. Should they accept and practice spiritual principles, there is a much better chance that the head of the family will recover. And even though he continues to drink, the family will find life more bearable. For the type of alcoholic who is able and willing to get well, little charity in the ordinary sense of the word is needed or wanted. The men who cry for money and shelter before conquering alcohol are on the wrong track. Yet we do go to great extremes to provide each other with these very things when such action is warranted. This may seem inconsistent, but we think it is not. I'm going to read one more paragraph because you guys can tie that all together. It is not the matter of giving that is in question, but when and how to give. That often makes the difference between failure and success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely upon our assistance rather than upon God. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. Is that the shortest sentence in the book? Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence on God. Elizabeth?
Yeah, well, yeah, a few things. I've definitely been helpful to a family before, even though the husband was still drinking. And I tell people, I also have experience as a wife of an alcoholic. So, and I've done Al-Anon and Al-Anon steps, and I let people know that, when I give my husband's number to men, I'll say, you can take my number and give it to your wife if she needs some support too. You're welcome to have her contact me and stuff like that. And, because I know, it's hard, but I don't get thoroughly involved there. I'm not active there now, so I make sure they know how to reach help for Al-Anon and stuff like that. So that's really good. And I don't, they didn't have that when they wrote this book, right? But they do now. So it's definitely helpful when we know how to direct them there. And and I like how it says it's not the matter of giving, it's when and how to give. And again, that's this, going back to the singleness of purpose. Someone said, in the chat that it doesn't matter what substance it is, we have a living problem. Well, the reason why I brought up the example of the person telling me they're tapering off benzos and that's why they can't do the work is I don't have that experience, and I don't know if they're sincere about getting sober. I don't know if they're messing with me, I don't know if I'm wasting my time there, that they're still wanting to use and they just want to tell somebody else they have a sponsor. So that's when it matters. I agree with, this is not just about what substance we used, to whatever, but that's why the singleness matters to me, because I don't have that experience. Let's see. I wanted to point out something else too. Where is it? Yeah, and seeing people when they start saying stuff like, "Oh, I can't make the meeting because my job's too demanding," Well, we already know, right? Oh, you're going to go live your life and put your life ahead of AA. and we see what happens to those people. Oh, I feel better now. I'm not feeling so sick anymore. Oh, I think I think I got this thing. I'm good. I can stay sober. And then I remind them, when you're not using the tools of AA, you're not active, in the program of action, then you're staying sober on self-knowledge, and you're putting other things first. And that's a tricky one, and I get it. I'm in a newcomer meeting. A lot of times people get their life back. They start getting real busy. And we tell them, like, it's important that you keep your foot in AA. You got to keep it over here. Because if you don't, that's, we'll see you when you get back, hopefully. And I love how it says that we as long as we place our dependence upon other people ahead of dependence on God. I have a really long dry drunk phase. I was a good manager, and I had a foundation in this program, and I'm also on, I think it's page 32, might be 34 also, but I was young and I quit in time. I had one of those, the degree to how much you need a spiritual experience depends upon how much you lost your power of choice and drink. I got here very early, and I stayed dry for a really long time with just a tiny flimsy read of something, but I managed my life, but not everyone's able to do that. And I tell people, you need to know where you are. What kind of alcoholic are you? How much can you get away with? How much AA do you think you need? I think I need more today than I ever have, because the pain of not working this program is so great today. It hasn't become less. It's become more. I found out over Christmas that something happened, and I struggled with just grief and rage for weeks. And I threw every bit of AA at it, everything that I could. And I still felt that thread of grief. And then I was mad because I wasn't feeling better, even though I did all this AA, right? I wanted on my terms and my timetable, right? But I take this very seriously. I don't want to lose my place here. And I make sure people know that it's possible, but it's also possible to stay sober, but I have to be willing to do the work, And again, where is that sentence, Gigi, that says, if we see them make effort, we bend over backwards. We'll do anything to help them as long as we see that they're making some effort.
It's somewhere, but I don't remember where it is.
Is it near 142 somewhere?
It's right around there.
Okay.
It's in the family afterward.
Oh, okay. No, I'm at Two Employers. I'm going to find it though. Go ahead, Gigi.
Employers. It's there. It might be in Two Employers too. It's there.
Okay. You go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I love the fact that Elizabeth pointed out a couple of things. First of all, that whole, I'm better, right? We hear about that. We hear about that in A Vision for You, because A Vision for You starts out on the dark side, and then it's almost like a sunrise, right? We start out in the pitch black in A Vision for You, and then the sun starts to come up, but I always laugh at the boy whistling in the dark, right? Feel better, look better. I think I'll join the gym, and he's still the boy whistling in the dark. And this becomes the problem. We beautiful, beautiful third step promises. And we hear about Jim, who failed to enlarge his spiritual life. He made a good start, but he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. Through what? It doesn't say enlarge our life through enlarge our spiritual life through prayer and meditation. It says enlarge our spiritual life through work, so self-sacrifice and working with others. That's what it says in Bill's story, right? And if we accept those third step promises and we get our ego, which begins to rebuild when we get those third step promises, then we know that the material is going to come in and it's going to squeeze out the spiritual. And Elizabeth made mention of pain, right? Pain, spiritual pain needs spiritual principles, and that is where the growth and the magic begin to happen. When the spiritual pain, because I know I had the same thing. I was in the program 2.5 years. I wasn't drinking at all. Wow, look at me, right? I'm better. I should be feeling 100% because I haven't picked up a drink. Yeah, I almost picked up a gun instead. But when I do these spiritual principles, because they're in the back of my head, right? Because you people put them there, right? And those steps and those traditions and God all over the place, and I was freaking out, right? But I was so desperate to stop drinking. But the minute my spiritual principles met my spiritual pain, boom, magic happened. But my spiritual pain had to get real bad. So why isn't it good to let an alcoholic live in our home? Well, because it's just not helpful, right? And like Elizabeth pointed out, this is Al-Anon principles before Al-Anon existed, right? And Bill and Lois learned that if they allowed too many alcoholics to stay too much of the time, all they're going to do is stay drunk. That's all they're going to do is stay drunk, you know? Um, and why will the family find the life more bearable? Well, the family will find life more bearable because they're living life on spiritual principles. That's why. Now, we didn't invent this stuff, right? It says that Bill acquired this. This has been around since time immemorial, right? Since the dawn of man, right? Spiritual. When I was a little girl, I was raised with spiritual principles, right? My parents were be quick to see where religious people were right, but the problem was this, and it tells me that. It tells me if a mere code of morals was enough. Well, I had a code of morals, a mere code of morals, but it wasn't enough because something got lost between here, and the bend at the elbow, right? So something got lost there. I knew what to do, I just couldn't do it. And that's what Carl Jung told Roland Hazard. He said, "You're just not capable of making good decisions, Roland," right? But why? Why? Because Roland had a spiritual malady, right? So little charity in the ordinary sense of the word is needed or wanted, meaning charity, handouts, right? Um, we're giving charity, we're giving of ourselves, right? But we're not giving handouts. That's not what we are here for. I tell people, I am not your marriage counselor. I am not your job. I'm not the human resources department at your job. And I am certainly not your financial manager because you do not want financial advice from me. Take my word for it. So we go to great extremes to provide each other with these very things. How do we provide? Well, what we are doing here is we are going to these extremes. What we're trying to do is we're trying to reenact the St. Francis prayer. That is what we are trying to do. And we cannot and will not put that emphasis on human beings because it has told us from the minute we opened this book that human power was not enough to recover. And what I always ask people is, who tried to get you better and was it successful? And sometimes the list can be short if you started young, right? Like Elizabeth did. And sometimes if you started very late in life, like I did, that list of people that tried to make you stop drinking can be very, very long list, but no human power. That's what I got. Thank you.
Wonderful. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trusts in God and clean house. Now, the domestic problem. There may be divorce, separation, or just strained relations. When your prospect has made such reparation as he can to his family and has thoroughly explained to them the new principles by which he is living, he should proceed to put these principles into action at home. That is, if he is lucky enough to have a home. Though his family be at fault in many respects, he should not be concerned about that. He should concentrate on his own spiritual demonstrations. Argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. In many homes, this is a difficult thing to do, but it must be done if any results are to be expected. If persisted in for a few months, the effect on a man's family is sure to be great. The most incompatible people discover they have a basis on which they can meet. Little by little, the family may see their own defects and admit them. These can then be discussed in an atmosphere of helpfulness and friendliness. After they have seen tangible results, the family will perhaps want to go along. These things will come to pass naturally and in good time, provided, however, the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful, regardless of what anyone says or does. Of course, we will all fall short or much below the standard many times, but we must try to repair the damage immediately, lest we pay the penalty by a spree. Gigi?
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to begin to get into the domestic problem. But what we have been seeing so far on this page is that people might try to put conditions on their sobriety, right? I have to have my family back. I have to have my job back. I have to have the kids back. I have to have a hot fudge sundae every night. No matter what conditions they try to put on their sobriety, right here, we are going to get, and I love the short paragraphs, right? Because the short paragraphs are the most packed, I find, anyway. I find the big ones get a little bit wordy, right? Because Bill was a little wordy. But I find that the short paragraphs get directly to the point and burn the idea, brand. Think of it as when they brand cattle, right? They're going to burn the idea right into you. And that is trust God and clean house. And what this is saying is we must do both. Attending meetings is not enough. We have to surrender and do the work to clear the channel. We have to first accept first we have to accept that we are powerless from a medical point of view. Once I put it in my body, I cannot stop. And once I start, I cannot stay stopped because I have this mental obsession and this spiritual malady and the peculiar mental twist. So then we have to accept the solution, right? Which we know what that is. That's a power greater than ourselves. And then we have to accept the plan of action. So again, the new principle, I love this, the new principles by which we live, put the principles into action. It is not enough to know what they are because that's just that's book knowledge, that's self-knowledge, that's academia. Academia is not enough. We have to put the program into action, 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 and more action. Faith without works is dead. How many times do we have to hear that? And what we have to see is that if we are demonstrating, listen, this miracle happened, right? When I was drinking, before I got sober, before I really started practicing the principles in all my affairs, I wanted to push my husband down a flight of stairs or put the pillow over his face. I wasn't sure which one I wanted to do. My mother was the Wicked Witch of the West. My coworkers all sucked, okay? And then all of a sudden, I got better, and guess what? They got better. It's a miracle. It's a miracle what Alcoholics Anonymous did for them, right? All of a sudden, they're like these nice people. And that's what practicing the argument and fault finding, the grouch and the brainstorm are not for us. The slow burn and the transient rage are not for us. And little by little, it's not going to happen at once. It's spiritual progress versus not spiritual perfection, right? But again, it's telling us that this may happen. It's not a guarantee. It's that this may happen, and if it may happens, then we accept it gracefully because we do a dance of grace and willingness with God, right? We provide the willingness, God provides the grace, and we have to be sober, considerate, and helpful. That doesn't sound like a really tall order, does it? Sober, considerate, and helpful, right? We make it out like, oh my God, what they want me to do. And of course, we don't want to pay the penalty by a spree. You know, argument and fault finding, we have to focus on our spiritual walk with God. And anger will take us back to what we were. So we have to avoid that. Elizabeth, my dear.
Yes. Wow. So much in this, this is where, first of all, I'm getting totally nailed because my husband and I have been arguing a lot lately. And, I have to remember that I am this person too. I'm just not just the people I'm helping. It's me. And, I briefly sponsored a man who had put his family through a 10-day coma. And then he wanted to complain about his wife, something she was doing. And I would frequently remind him, And I asked him, you know, do you want to be a husband? Do you want to stay in this relationship? You know, and I would tell him that if, you know, you want to stay in this relationship, I suggest you act like a good husband. Now, what does it take to be a good husband? You know, and put it in those terms. And as far as, you know, and remember the fact that you put your family through a 10-day coma. Okay, so pretty much anything your wife does, yeah, just remember that you put your family through a 10-day. It's kind of like, and then, you know, I went through a period with my husband and he was in a dry drunk and it was really painful for me. And I had my Al-Anon sponsor at the time. She just kept telling me, you know, focus on your own recovery. Like you just have to focus on your own recovery and get, you know, and I did, and it actually made things worse for us at first, you know, for sure, because I was pulling away and just focusing on my own recovery. But I think that, you know, one thing that some of you know me and know that I've been through a couple relapses with my husband. And one of the things about us being, you know, there's a list now of what active recovery looks like, you know, and one of the things on the list was that I wanted him to have a sponsor who's married. And we both have sponsors who have been in marriages. Because, yeah, one time he had a sponsor that I think the guy had just he was kind of a player, you know. He didn't have long-term relationships, and you're going to get a real different attitude from a person like that. You know, it's hard to be in a marriage with with especially two alcoholics. Now I think that most people that are attracted to us, I mean, you can scratch the surface and find something in their background. It's usually not by mistake. You know, it's like, oh, you had a parent that was an alcoholic. No surprise that you ended up with an alcoholic, right? You know, but I think that this is another example of it's really important to get that experience. You know, just like Gigi said about page 18. You know, I need to talk to somebody who knows what it means to stay in a marriage, who, you know, because I believe in that and I'm committed to that, but it can be hard, you know, and people who have not tried to be in a long-term marriage, they don't know what that's like. They don't know how hard that can be, because it can be, you know, really, really challenging. I still have huge fears from, you know, even recently, that when things look like they looked when he was in his, you know, I didn't know he was in his relapse for a couple months, and it starts to look that way, I get into huge immediate fear. And then I want him to be able to be on the other side of that. And that's not always possible. You know, it's just real interesting. There's a lot there. And, you know, this is about living our lives, you know. But as far as, you know, I also love to tell people, like a lot of people come in and they've lost their relationship. They're, you know, they're afraid they're going to, and I say, you know, divorce takes a long time. And people told me that yeah, I've been through a lot. If anyone's going through any challenging relationships, I'm going to put my number in the chat. You can talk to me, but you know, you get a lot of people that they show up because that's happening in their life, and to help them and say, you know, first of all, one day you might be grateful for this because it's the thing that got you to quit. You know, I'm working with someone now that's hopeful to get her relationship back, you know, and, you know, and I tell them, you know, it might happen, but yeah, you've put them through hell. So it's time for you to be accountable. You're going to have to probably eat crow for a long time before you're going to be able to let them be the bad guy, you know. And I'm like finding out now, I mean, it's taken 2 years. I get to be the one that's the difficult one now. Like, it's really nice to have his support and not have, you know, it's nice to have that. I don't know. It's just really nice that I can count on him to be emotionally available, but it's taken a long time, you know, and I've had to understand, like, it's hard for them to get sober. You know, if you're talking to the wife, you know, if you're talking to the family, to let them know this is really hard. Them getting sober is really hard, you know, and try to just give them a lot of grace during that period, you know, because it will get better. It will get better if they keep working on and keep doing the program. But sometimes it takes a really long time, physically, mentally. Recovering alcoholics, you know, the ones that are in early days, they're still dealing with physical, and then they're dealing with I think my husband also did, he also did crack, and he said he feels like it took him like 2 years to come back every time, you know, mentally. So give them some grace, you know, everybody in the family, give each other some grace. It just doesn't matter, you know? I mean, there's so many little things that we pick apart and it's stupid, you know, it doesn't matter in the long run. Try to remember, my sponsor, you know what she says? Just love him. Oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. That's right. Anyway, that's it. Go ahead.
Beautiful. We're going to conclude that portion. Next week, we will come back and talk about divorce, separation, and what you and the new man will do. We'll probably finish up working with others next week. Now we are going to have questions and comments from the audience.